Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so we would like to welcome, we have two individuals here from the Army, and they will introduce themselves and give us their Army story and how it relates to the medical careers. Sounds great. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
That's way better than we got the first period last time we came in. That's great. You guys had some coffee?
No.
A little bit? No? Okay. Anyway, my name is Staff Sergeant Thomas Bowen. I'm an Army recruiter stationed here in Manchester, Connecticut. Okay? I've been in the Army for, 11 years now. Joined the Army in 2003. And I joined the Army for a field that most people don't even know that the Army had. Okay? I was a musician for the United States Army. I was a trumpet player.
Yes, she's just a little nervous.
Okay, that's all right.
Come on in.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. I got a seat for you right here.
So I actually joined the Army out of high school to be a musician, a full-time professional musician for the United States Army. That was what I wanted to do. It was not an easy thing to do. Had to pass an audition to get that job. Most people don't know about the band field, but most people realize that the Army band program is the only field in the Army you have to actually have a skill to enlist prior to. Okay, everyone that goes into that has to pass the audition. It was not an easy audition. I had to take it twice to finally pass the audition, and I joined for that. Okay, people think Army band, right? We don't do all the Army stuff. Well, we still have to do a lot of the Army stuff. I had to go to basic training. I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina in September of 2003. Graduated there in November of 2003. After basic training, I went to my AIT, which was my job training for the job that I chose, which was musician. And that was in Little Creek, Virginia. That was Norfolk Naval Amphibious Base in Norfolk, Virginia. I was there for 6 months, graduated there in June of 2004. My first duty station was Fort Drum, New York. And I was with the 10th Mountain Division Band from 2004 to 2007. Kind of a really cool experience for me, what I did there. We were a band. We also supported some other things related to that. While there, I was participating in a concert band, a stage band, which is a jazz band, a rock band, a show band. There's a lot of cool stuff that they were able to do. We actually toured all throughout New York and some other places like in Pennsylvania. I also traveled throughout the northeastern United States playing taps for military funerals. I did a lot of those, unfortunately, because that was a time when things were getting very busy in Afghanistan and Iraq. 2006, I deployed to Afghanistan, and we deployed as the 10th Mountain Division Band. The general wanted us there to support what we did for morale support and other activities as well. One of the first things they did when we got there is they sent us to Pakistan. What we were doing in Pakistan was earthquake relief forces, okay? And all the people that we sent over there, they were just sent over there with their equipment to support them, but they had no real training on security. And we did all our pre-deployment training, even though we were the band. So we were the token U.S. security force for Pakistan for the humanitarian aid mission in 2006. So we were there from January until April 2006, and it was probably the coolest 3 months of my entire life. We actually got to see a whole other culture, actually live in that culture, and they loved us. It was fantastic. It really was. Came back to Afghanistan in April and started the rest of our deployment out as a band. We did some other things as well, but nothing really high stress, nothing real high danger, because we weren't that kind of unit. I came back in 2007 to Fort Drum, and I decided that I did not enjoy my career. Well, I wanted something different. I wanted a different job in the Army. I wanted a different job in general. So I left active duty Army, went into the Army Reserves, was a professional truck driver from 2007 to 2010. My son was born in 2009, and I realized that being home 4 days out of the month was a terrible, terrible occupation for a family person. So I applied to be a recruiter for the Army Reserve, and I've been doing this ever since 2010. 2010, I went to Hudson, Wisconsin, where I was a recruiter out there, which is right outside of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. I did that for 2.5 years before coming out here to Connecticut in November of 2012, and I've been here since. So the Army's been great to me and my family. I've got a wife and 3 kids. Right now, we actually live up in Union, Connecticut. It's been a great experience. So Schaefer?
Good morning. All right. My name's Sergeant Schaefer. I'm also a recruiter here in Manchester, Connecticut. First started out my Army career back in December 8th of 2000 when I actually enlisted in the Army Reserves. I spent 2 years in 412th Civil Affairs Battalion in Whitehall, Columbus. I didn't like the Army Reserves, so what I did is I went active duty, got married, and then I ended up going down to Fort Bragg, North Carolina in October of 2002. And once I once I went down to Fort Bragg, I got stationed in a unit called 1st Battalion, 3rd Special Forces Group. Basically, it's a Special Forces unit out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. From there, I went to Afghanistan 7 times. Basically, we worked from various positions from, on the ground, an on the ground RTO, which is a radio telephone operator, which basically I carried a radio on my back and I walked around with my commander, making sure that he could talk to higher headquarters. And then I also, once I got higher rank, I was basically a network commander or a network leader. I would sit in basically a bunker and make sure that all my radios and stuff were good to go, and we can talk to the guys on the ground. I went to basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina in 2001, August of 2001. I've been to airborne school where I successfully learned how to jump from an airplane and not die. Never been injured on a jump. I've got 40 jumps, 40 successful jumps out of an airplane. I've been all over the world. I've been to Spain. I've been to Germany. I've been to Afghanistan. I've been to Ireland. I've been to Turkey. Just places here, stopping and going from going back and forth to Afghanistan. We get 1 to 2 day layovers, and it's awesome. Great, awesome traveling. It's absolutely amazing. You should definitely try it one day. And then back in August of 2012, I got orders to go to recruiting school. Then I went back down to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, in March. I think it was March 2012, 2013. I went to recruiting school.
Sounds about right. You got here in June.
Yeah, March 2013. I went to recruiting school in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I spent 7 weeks there. Came back in June 17th of 2013. I've been here, and I've been here ever since.
Kind of shows you a little bit about the diversity of what the Army can do. So, Sergeant Schaefer, what's your MOS right now?
I'm a 25 Charlie, which is a single channel radio operator.
He's a radio operator who was assigned to a Special Forces group for 10 years.
Yeah.
So obviously you can imagine the diversity of experiences and things like that he got to do as a 25 Charlie radio operator was pretty high. How many times did you deploy total?
So I've deployed seven times. I have 42 months in country, so I got almost close to 4 years being in Afghanistan.
Yeah, they were a very, very busy unit. I mean, in contrast, I was with a band out of a division. I deployed once. I spent a total of 10 months in country. So very, very diverse arrangement of experience that you can have in the Army through really anything that you may choose. I'd like to open up with any questions you guys may have about the Army, Army Reserves, anything military related. Yes?
How heavy is your gear?
It all depends on what you're carrying. My gear right now is about 7 pounds with my boots, uniforms, and issued cell phone. It all depends on what we're carrying. I mean, like a basic combat loadout, which is like our rifle.
7 magazines.
Yeah, 7 magazines to 230 rounds of ammunition, or 220 rounds, or 210 rounds of ammunition. An LB or IBA, a body armor set, along with all your tactical gear, stuff like that. It's what, 35, 40 pounds, something like that.
Yeah.
It's not that much, but it all depends on what you're doing. So one of my coworkers, you guys haven't gotten a chance to meet him, Staff Sergeant Douglas. He was an 11 Charlie, indirect fire infantryman. Anyone take a wild guess what an indirect fire infantryman is? What's indirect? Doesn't go in a straight line, right? It's not direct.
Perfect.
So indirect fire, they use what's called a mortar. A mortar is a small piece of artillery that shoots around up into the air and it comes down and it blows up. That's what they are. So he operated a mortar. Okay, if you ever want to know what a mortar is, if you Google it on your Chromebooks, you probably see all kinds of pictures of mortars. They're very active. They're used all the time because they're portable. You can put one on your back with all your stuff. Well, anyways, 11 Charlie, he can carry over 100 pounds of stuff with him when he's out and around. So, I mean, it varies very widely based on your mission. How much was your radio set as an RTO?
As an RTO, we would have to carry 2 spare batteries, which they weigh about 3 pounds apiece. We have to carry water. We have to carry our food for the day. If say we're going out for 3 days, we have to carry at least 3 days worth of food, 3 days worth of water. My radio, my radio itself was 18 pounds, and then whatever else we needed. So I had a backpack. Just my rucksack weighed about 75 pounds, and then so I'd literally have to carry that thing for 4 days at a time. Plus my weapon, helmet, body armor with with 7 magazines, and then we usually carry a smoke grenade or a frag grenade. And then we carry some spare stuff, like maybe a couple spare things, compass, a GPS, something like that, in our packs as well. So usually, if I was walking, it was probably about between, I'd say, 90 and 110 pounds of gear that we would carry for up and down mountains. So it's pretty intense. And then usually, what happens if you got a good squad or a bunch of good, what you do is you cross-load everything. So I wouldn't have to carry everything all at one time. So I wouldn't get too tired too quickly.
Yeah, he passed off some of his gear to somebody else who's carrying less of a load, so just kind of spread things out a little bit. So, but not everyone goes through all that. I mean, in my career, I've never actually had to carry, the longest I've ever had to do is I had to do 12-mile qualification march at Fort Drum with like 40 pounds. Depending on what your job is and things like that, I've never been put in a position like that.
I know mostly in Afghanistan when I was there, being with a special force unit, we would travel long distances. We wouldn't just do local patrols. We would literally just go find the bad guys, high value targets, and then so we would drive 25 kilometers to a compound where we know where a bad guy could have been. And we would do raids onto the compound, and we would always come in vehicles. 90% of the time I was in a truck, so I didn't really have to carry too much. I just had to make sure I had a good go bag for when it was time to get out of the vehicle and assault the objective.
Yes.
How hard was the training?
Well, I mean, you're going to get a different answer for anyone that goes through. Okay. Now, training. This is from my perspective. I went through in 2003. You're talking about basic training, or training in general.
Just training in general.
Training in general is not supposed to be easy. That's part of the design of Army training. It's not going to be easy for anybody, although very rarely is it considered impossible. Okay? The guys you work with, the Special Forces operators, they have a very, very high attrition rate. Their training is brutal, and I mean brutal. We have people that join for Special Forces candidate as an 18 X-ray, is what the program is called, which is where they go through basic training, infantry training, airborne training, then they go into the Special Forces selection and qualification process. From what I understand, less than 10% actually make it through that. Okay? Another really very difficult school we have is Explosive Ordnance Disposal, EOD, the Army's bomb squad. Okay? How many people do you think would you think we would want to qualify through there that have made mistakes in the process? None, right? You fail a test in EOD school, you are done. There are no retests. I actually talked with a couple of EOD folks last week, and we were at an event, and they said that during their AIT they disqualify about 80% of people because they have something like 40 tests. You get below an 80% test in one of them, 80% score in any one of them, you're done. There is no retry because it's a very critical job. You can't screw that job up. Most training in the Army is not like that. When I went through basic training, there were 42 of us. Half my platoon were female. We lived separately, trained together in a unit. Nobody would ever say it was easy, but I don't think we lost anybody the entire time we went through there. Everybody actually made it through.
Basic training isn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask. So you all go if you're going to the Army, you all go through a basic training program, and then you kind of go and specialize.
Well,
training?
that's exactly the way it works. Okay. So the next thing we're actually going to go into. Any more questions based on what we talked about before? Okay. Here's how jobs work in the Army. Okay. So jobs work in the Army based on qualifications. So you have to qualify based on the ASAT test. So everyone decides they want to join the Army, they take an aptitude test. That aptitude test is actually offered here in the high school, I believe, around the end of this month, is it?
You had said that last time, so I'm thinking of it.
Next
And I'll put it
next
up on our
Wednesday.
board.
That's right, next Wednesday. That's right, yeah, we'll be there for that. So it's a qualification test. It's 3 hours long. It's a standardized test. Okay, and this test basically has 8 different sections ranging from math, English, and some vocational sections. There's like a shop technology course. There's an automotive section. There's different sections they're trying to find your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, that ASAT test does 2 things. First of all, the composite score qualifies you to join the Army. Okay, but it's the line scores that matter to us. We have 8 individual scores that the Army pulls from that test, and those 8 scores determine what you qualify for. For example, you guys talk about healthcare, right? Somebody wants to be a medic in the Army. We require a 107 GT score and a 108 ST score. So you have those 2 scores. If you don't have those 2 scores, I can't make you a medic. Why do we do that? Because it takes a lot of money. It takes about $80,000 to take somebody from where you sit right now, put you through basic training. It takes many $1,000s more than that to get you through your AIT. We don't want to waste our tax dollars sending you to a course you're not going to pass. So most courses, people make it through without a lot of issue. No one's going to say it's easy. Most times, with the exception of like EOD, Special Forces, some of the very hard schools, if you fail a portion, they'll recycle you back for a week, have you repeat that training. That's generally the way it works. So, job selection in the Army, that was the other thing I wanted to go over. A lot of people think you join the Army, you get the job we pick for you. That's not the case. Some branches do that because they can't guarantee a job in the contract. That's not the way the Army even operates with our contract policies. Okay? So somebody comes to me, they want to join the Army, I have them take the ASVAB test. I can either pull a test they take here at school, or I can send them to MEPS to take the test up there on the computer. Okay? Test is about 3 hours. Once we get those test scores, and we determine they're qualified to join the Army, what I can do is I can pull them up in my system that plugs those test scores in, and it basically lines up what you're qualified to do with what vacancies I have out there. Okay? So you have to be qualified for it and have to have a vacancy for it. Good example is firefighter. I've had people come to me and tell me they want to be a firefighter for the Army because technically, yes, that is an MOS. We probably have a couple dozen firefighters Army-wide. Yes, it's an MOS, but I can't. The odds of me finding a vacancy for that are between slim and none. In almost 5 years recruiting, I've never seen it. So you may qualify for all 180 different jobs in the Army, but I may only come up with, say, 20 or 30 that I have out there at the time. So we look at that list, and if you decide that's something you wanted to do, I say, yes, okay, we can do that for you. I can make you a medic. I can make you an operating room specialist. I can make you a behavioral health specialist. I could do that. If we can't find what you want, I can make a phone call trying to get what you want, or you can always wait. We've done that before. We just come back in a week and try again, because the whole process is not obligatory until you actually raise your right hand and swear in. Everything up until that point. So everyone that actually goes down to join the Army for us has a job locked in, guaranteed that they've agreed to do before they actually make any kind of commitment. And that reservation includes a training date, where they're going to basic training, includes when they're going to basic training, where and when AIT is. And that's all guaranteed, locked in the contract. The only time that can ever change is if you fail training for some reason. In some schools like EOD, Diver, Special Forces are relatively common. We tell people that. And if that happens, you fail out of the course, then the Army will find you something different to do. But the majority of jobs, people will make it through training just fine. So, yes?
There's a difference between like the Navy and the Air Force.
There are a lot of differences and a lot of similarities. I could probably talk for an entire day straight on all of them if we were to go into detail. But in a nutshell, pay is going to be the same across all branches, right? So I'm a staff sergeant in the Army. I'm an E6. That's what I have in the pay chart. So I would get paid the same as a petty officer first class in the Navy who was also an E6 with my years of service. It basically goes off of pay grade and years of service. So I have more than 10 years in service, so I make more than my same rank with 8 years in service. The longer you're in, the higher your pay goes, and the greater your rank is, the higher your pay goes. That's essentially the way it works. So, as far as other differences, some job selection differences are out there. Sergeant Bolter, he wasn't able to make it out here. He spoke with us a couple weeks ago for some other classes. Sergeant Bolter joined the Navy to start. And when Sergeant Bolter joined the Navy, they didn't actually lock him in a job. He actually went in as undesignated. So he didn't actually have an MOS when he first started. A lot of people do that in the Navy. I know the Marine Corps, you essentially tell your Marine Corps recruiter what job you want. You actually enlist in the Marines, and then they actually dictate the final job that you're going to get. Air Force is kind of similar in respect to you join the Air Force first. After you join, you give them a list of 10 jobs you want. And within that list of 10 jobs, they will select one of them for you based on your scores. This is information I've gathered from the other recruiters I work in my building. I don't work with a Coast Guard recruiter. Claire's closest Coast Guard recruiter, I don't even know where they are, honestly. Oh, that's right, they're up in Manchester as well. I haven't really spoken with them. So job selection is a little bit different between the services. Obviously, duty locations are different. Okay? Most of your military installations have representatives from all the services there. I mean, at Fort Drum, we had an airfield, so we had Air Force personnel there. There were a few Navy personnel there. But in a general sense of the word, each service has their own installations and things like that.
You can think about the Navy, they're on boats. The Navy is, most time they're on boats. The Air Force, they're going to be on airfields or flying airplanes, or crew chiefs or like air crew.
Right.
Of the Army, we're basically an occupying ground force. We go in, essentially as the war starts, we go in. we occupy. And the Marines, think of the Marines as like they're
Amphibious.
an amphibious assault force that will assault beachheads and stuff like that. And then they kind of spearhead a lot of operations and stuff like that. So that's the main difference between each branch of service.
Yes.
What does a typical work week look like?
So for the Army, so for active duty Army soldier, generally it's works Monday through Friday, okay? So when I was a 4-term on a regular line unit, okay, in most regular line units, they're gonna have PT Monday through Friday, which is where you work out with your unit. Everyone gets together and they do a workout program together as a unit. That's typically for an hour. 4-term, we used to do that from 7 to 8 in the morning. 8 o'clock, everyone went home, they showered, they got breakfast, they got ready for the day, they got dressed, they changed into this, and they showed up for work at 9:30. We generally worked whatever job that we may have. Obviously in the band we did a lot of rehearsals, things like that, till 11:30. Then we went to lunch. 11:30 to 1 o'clock was lunch, came back at 1 o'clock. We generally come back and work till 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, we all, just like any other job, we see you guys tomorrow, we head out and we go home and do whatever it is that we do. A lot of people think when you join the Army that you're doing this 24/7 and that's all you're doing. That's not the case. Generally, most Army units, we work 40, 45-hour work weeks, give or take. The only big difference between us, work hour-wise, and a civilian employer is the fact that we get together in the mornings and work out.
Some jobs require you to do field operations as well, to go out into the field while you're technically still like here at your unit, not being deployed. That way,
Yeah, exercises.
yeah. So basically, you can just kind of brush up on your skills. Some units go for 15 days, some units go for 30 days, some go for 45 days. It just all depends what unit you're in. And then there you won't go home. You'll stay. You'll be out in a forward operating base like scenario, and you'll just be running mock drills and mock missions and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's another.
We used to do one field exercise a year, and it was like 7 days. I mean, again, Sergeant Schaefer, with the Special Forces group, obviously they're doing a much higher degree of that sort of tactical training than we would.
And we would usually, I would usually go to El Paso, Texas, or Fort Henry Harrison in Montana, and we would run between 45 and 60-day drills out there in unconventional warfare. So that was we did a lot of that, and we usually did that right around a month or so before we deploy.
Yep.
What type of people do you interact with during your day?
So that's kind of a loaded question. Because I'm a recruiter, I work with absolutely everybody. Absolutely everybody. Okay, who we try to work with? Honestly, younger people. Our age group that can actually is eligible to join the United States Army is between 17 until their 35th birthday. But generally, the older people get, the more likely they are to be disqualified for us. So we try to spend our time in high schools or working with people in colleges, things like that.
When you were in high school, did you guys know that you wanted to be part of the Army, or was it kind of after in college?
Well, for me, when I was about 15 or 16, I had a cousin. His name was Tim Rixey. He actually joined the Army, and he went to Alaska. And he came back on leave one time, and he told me how awesome and how great the Army was. And then from there, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew at college wasn't for me. I didn't want to go to college, so I joined the Army Reserves and figured out that was a mistake because that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I went active duty after that.
Yeah. Well,
So-
the Army Reserve, to clarify, is part-time Army.
Yes.
So Army Reserves is 1 week in a month. It's 2 weeks in the summertime. The other 28 days out of the month, you're doing whatever it is you're doing right now. So that was his.
Yeah, so I was about 15 years old when I knew I wanted to join the Army. That was my turning point.
See, for me, it's totally different. I knew from the start I wanted to go to college. Okay, I was going to college. That was my whole plan. The problem is, it started going into my senior year. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do because for me, it was a combination of a problem with I didn't want to go to school for something that I could not get a job in. That's a very common thing. Why do I want to go to school for 4 years, accrue all this debt, and find out I can't get a job in whatever this is? Or the other fear I had was I was going to go to school full time for something, come out of college and decide I hate my job. And I thought, I just wasn't ready to make a decision. I couldn't figure it out yet. So what happened for me was I want to say around like September, October, my senior year, right when everyone was putting in their college applications, I was still, holy crap, what do I do? I got a call from a recruiter. I was actually recommended by my band instructor for the Army band. The audition process was hard, and I was very good at the time, and they recommended me for that. And so for me, as a senior, I thought, wow, I could spend 3 years in the Army band being a professional musician and take some time to figure this out and pay for college along the way, because with the GI Bill and the different college benefits and incentives and things like that, I knew that when I left the Army 3 years later, if I wanted to, college would be 100% paid for. So I thought this just makes complete sense. Let's get out, get a little experience in the world, play my horn a little bit, and figure things out. So for me, no, it wasn't something I always wanted to do. Generally, in my experience, the people that always want to do it come to us, and they generally want combat arms of some flavor, because that's what they see. In my opinion, a lot of people, I think, play way too much Call of Duty and think it's something it's not. Okay? Okay, you're that guy?
Yeah.
Okay, but that's just my opinion. But a lot of people come to us, a lot of people decide they want to do it when they realize, A, how expensive college really is. Okay, just to give you some idea of something, I went through to post-university. The Army paid for my entire degree, all of it. I paid a $90 graduation fee, and that was all I paid for it. Okay, now, I'm actually going back to school, because I'm trying to get into a medical school, and it's going to take me some time. So I'm taking one class, I'm enrolled in one class at UConn, part-time next semester. The bill for all that, when I added all the fees, I can show you the emails, up to about $2,000.
For one
For
class.
one class. College is expensive, so if you go to a full-time university, obviously, or excuse me, a state university, you're probably going to pay $15,000, $16,000 a year, which is over $60,000 for a 4-year degree, which is way up from 10 years ago when I was looking at colleges, and it keeps rising. So you want to go to a private school, the damage is much, much worse. You're looking at $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, or even $50,000 per year, depending on which school you go to. So that was, a big motivator, I think, for a lot of people, is when they actually get that reality check. They look at the bill, holy cow, that's a lot of student loans I don't want to pay back. So.
What is it like to jump out of a plane?
What is it like to jump out of a plane? You ever been on top of a really, really, really like a mountain, and then you're looking out, and this is like everything is like this big.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. You're basically as you're standing in the aircraft, it's shaking, and you just like that, the wind's rushing around, and and you get up to the door, and you look out the door, and it's just like, oh, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But like, you ever been in a nervous situation where your stomach's turned upside down, and like you got a lot of adrenaline, and it's like you feel like you're on top of the world?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it feels like every single time. And then when you jump, it's a loud rush of air like that, and you look up, and once your parachute's open, it's the most quiet, and it's the most beautiful thing you'll ever see in your entire life. It's awesome. It's great. I love it.
And it lasts for how long?
About the whole experience will last about 25 seconds. That's it.
Yeah, we don't. It's not recreational jumping. We're jumping from 10, 12, 14,000 feet for the experience. Army Airborne is jumping out at, what is it? I think it's like 1,200 feet.
In training, it's 1,250 feet. Once you come out of training, you usually go a little higher, 2,500 feet, adjusted. It's called AGL, just off the ground. It's not from sea level. So it's about in between 2,000 and 2,500 feet you're jumping from. It's pretty intense. It's awesome. It's good.
Is education required for the Army?
Yes, you are at least for the Army Reserves what's it, GED, correct? You at least have a GED.
Well, here's the way it works. Education is very important to the Army in all facets. Okay, so everyone has to have a credential to start out. When I first started recruiting, nobody with anything less than a high school diploma, a bona fide high school diploma, could join the Army at all whatsoever. Distance learning did not apply, GED did not apply, none of it did. High school diploma and higher was all we accepted. Okay, starting about a year and a half ago, we started taking GEDs again. Starting 6 months ago, GEDs are only eligible for the Army Reserves at this point in time, because the active duty Army is honestly not looking for people like we once were. We're relatively full, so the standards have raised. So everyone has to have some kind of credential. Okay. Now, the Army is willing to pay you for more than that as well. So, if you go to school and get 24 college credit hours, that's a year of school, less than a year of school, and come to me, I can put you in at a rank higher. You have 48 credit hours, I can put you in at 2 ranks higher. Some come in with a bachelor's degree. If they enlist, they're coming in as a specialist, which is 2 ranks under me. So the Army also pays for education. But I talk with at least a few kids every year who come to me, I want to drop out and join the Army. I tell them, sorry pal, that's a terrible idea, because if you drop out, you will never get in the Army. It's a fact of life.
Can I direct you guys to, I wanted to offer the class the same information you had given the other classes, the fact that your future plans, and then do you mind talking about the training you had, advanced training life support class?
Oh, yeah.
within. So training can happen within the Army, and then there's also the side
Right.
swipe with signing up for classes outside of.
Okay.
Yep.
Want to go first, or you want to?
Yeah, well, we didn't bring none of our, we
That's
didn't
okay.
bring none of our stuff today, but basically, I'm qualified in 2 separate areas. TCCC, Tactical Casualty Combat Care. Basically, what TCCC is it's a 1-week course on how to take care of somebody under fire. Say I am, we're in a small firefight or something like that, and somebody gets shot anywhere. What I am trained to do is I'm trained to give an IV. I am trained to basically dress all wounds and just administer first aid. We learned the ABCs. You guys know what the ABCs are? Airway, breathing, and circulation. If you ever come up to somebody that is laying on the ground, they seem to be unconscious, the first thing you do is you check for a response. Hey, are you okay? What are you doing? You're just laying there, no response. You check the airway. Basically, you come down and you put your cheek on his face, and you check for rise and fall of the chest, or you check for if you can feel any breathing on his just like any pressure on your cheeks. Then you go to circulation, what we call blood sweeps. What you do is you start off with, you come down, if you're on a knee, you start from the back of the head, and you work your way down, checking for any blood. You come down, sweep the bottom of the leg, come to this side, sweep the bottom of the leg, looking for any blood. Basically, that's your basic check on a person if they end up a casualty. We've trained to give IVs. I can in a combat situation. If you need fluids, I can give you fluids. Tourniquets. We've learned how to put on tourniquets. Very, very important. Tourniquets save more lives right now in the battlefield than almost anything. So I've also been through a really, really cool class. Not many people get afforded this opportunity, but it was live tissue training. Live tissue training basically is we would take an animal. It was a goat, and we would perform our procedures on it. Our procedures would be stopping bleeding. So basically, what we would do is we would take the goat and we would make the goat bleed. And what we would have to do is we would
They tranquilize the goat. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
the goat is not.
Yeah,
like-
the goat's tranquilized. I'm sorry. The goat's tranquilized. It's full of ketamine. The goat had no idea what's going on, and you got to see basically you see how long you keep your goat alive. So what we would do is we would cut the arteries, and we would count 1, 2, 3, and we would cut. Then there would be lots and lots of blood, and you'd have to stop the bleeding. And without that kind of training, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that. I got so confident on actually performing procedures because we use like dummies and stuff like that, and it's nothing like the real thing. It's nothing like actually having to stop the bleeding. I've done actual tracheas. So we would basically cut the goats open here and intubate, stick a tube down just in case he needs help breathing. We've stomach injuries. Basically take the goat and pull out its intestines. Cut him open in the side, pull out his intestines, and then we would learn how to keep those, to properly fix the goat. Basically, what you do, because everybody thinks if you have like say intestines hanging out, your first step is to put them back in. It's wrong. Do never do that, because basically what you've done is you expose the intestines to air, and then they have bacteria all over them because it could have got dirt, all kinds of just stuff from the ground, and you put it back in the body. Basically, you're infecting the body with just bacteria. So what you do is you kind of wash off the intestines as best you possibly can. Take the intestines, wrap them up, and then stick them on the side of the wound, and then wrap everything up that way. How to fix broken legs, broken fingers, broken any kind of broken bone. How to not necessarily set it, but how to use splints and how to makeshift splints and to keep legs or arms or joints immobilized. Other than that, that's basically what we learned when in all my medical training.
I mean, that seems, I saw some of the looks, I was looking around to see some of the looks while he's describing some of this training. Yes, it seems cruel, it seems awful, but you think about it for a second. If something happens to somebody and you're out there are no do-overs, there are no, oh wow, I wasn't trained, oh wow, I didn't think there was going to be that much blood. There are no, you have to know what you're doing, you absolutely have to do it. And I think at the end of the day, they euthanized the ghost at the end of this,
Yes.
right? So it's not, they did as humanely possible, but this training is absolutely crucial to saving lives. And it's something that they had to do. And in the medical field, like my wife tells me some stories, she's in clinicals right now for nursing. And they see and they do some stuff because you have to know how to do that sort of thing to be qualified to do it. So it's very important.
Yeah. It boosts your confidence when it actually comes time to take care of somebody that's been injured. Even even out here on the street, somebody gets in a car accident, and I see it. I'm 100% confident that I can save that person's life because I've done it before. So. Any questions? Go ahead.
How does like being married change like your army experience?
It's a huge difference. I'd like to let's talk about the other thing your teacher asked us to talk about. Then we'll field that question afterwards. Okay. Both of us have been married in the Army. I currently am married in the Army, and actually I can talk a lot about that too. Okay. One of the big things that I've been trying to do myself, and I'm actually moving towards the process right now, is I'm trying to become a doctor. Okay. Everyone knows the Army pays for education. Everyone's heard that. How do they do that? I kind of want to talk to you guys a little bit about the ways the Army pays for education, both in the healthcare field and otherwise. Okay. Everyone knows that the Army has doctors, the Army has nurses, the Army has physical therapists, the Army has all these different things. Okay? And we need those professionals. It's not my job to recruit those people. The people that do that recruiting, they're actually in Wallingford, Connecticut. They're AMED recruiters. I've talked with a lot of them because that's what I'm trying to do. Okay? So say somebody in high school, they decide, I want to be a doctor. Anyone decide you think you may want to go to medical school at some point? You might at some point? Have you guys ever thought about and looked at the progression as far as how you get there, what it takes? In a nutshell, you're looking at between 8 and 10 years of school plus another 3 to 6 years of on-the-job training. It's a lot. It's an awful lot. Okay, the Army has ways they can help you get all the way up there. Okay, the first one I want to talk about is called the Health Professional Scholarship Program. This is what I'm trying to get into. Well, one of the things I'm trying to get into. Okay, so say you go for your undergrad. Okay, you graduate your undergrad, you're pre-med. You apply to a medical school, which is, of course, the goal of a pre-med program. You get accepted to that medical school. You can take that letter of acceptance to an Army healthcare recruiter, and they can actually use that to contract you under their program, where they will pay everything. They'll pay all your fees, they'll pay your tuition, they'll pay your books, they'll even pay you a stipend for this fiscal year, $2,100 per year to be a student in medical school. Okay, they'll pay for all 4 years of your medical school. What they ask for in return is they ask that you essentially work for the Army as a doctor for 1 year for every year of medical school that they pay for. Okay? When you graduate medical school, you're going to commission as a major in the United States Army. That's an 04. That's a rank above my company commander. Okay? Which is, they make a decent living. Think about your average resident. Anyone ever looked at what your average resident makes when they're going through the training after medical school? So they've graduated, they're doctors, but they're still going through their training. What do they make on average? What do you think they should make after 8 years of school? Any guesses? Something? What's that? That's a low guess. The average is between $40,000 and $60,000 depending on where you're at, and they work 80-hour weeks as residents. That's not a whole lot. An Army major makes a lot more than that. Okay, so basically you graduate under this program, you're going through your residencies through the Army's residency programs. I think they have contracts through a lot of hospitals, civilian hospitals. Okay, and then basically you graduate and you work as a doctor for the Army for the minimum of however many years that they paid for your medical school. Okay, that's one of the ways out there. I think it's one of the best deals out there. When I was in Hudson, Wisconsin, where I was a recruiter beforehand, I talked with my personal doctor about what I was trying to do. He told me he's in his early 30s, just finished up all of his training, and he says he'll be paying his student loans off until he's almost 60. Okay, it is not cheap. Some of these guys are coming out of medical school with $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in loans. And of course, the people that make these loans know it's a good investment because they know that unemployment rate among doctors is very low, and they would make enough living to pay for it. But It's a lot. If you really want that shadow hanging over your head. Okay? Other thing out there is something called the Uniformed Services University for Health Sciences, USA. It's down in Bethesda, Maryland. This is actually my goal right now. I'm actually trying to get in here. This is where you have a bachelor's degree, okay? You apply for that program, you have to meet the med school requirements, and instead of the Army paying for you to go for another medical school and paying you while you go to medical school, they commission you, put you on active duty, which by the way you make a lot more than $2,100 a month, and you actually go to school as a full-time officer in that program. Okay, it's an outstanding program. It's one of the most valuable programs out there because at the end of the day you're going through this training, not just not paying for it, you're getting paid a lot of money to go through this training. Okay? So that's essentially how the Army will pay for somebody to become a doctor, because obviously the Army needs doctors like everybody else needs doctors at this point. Okay? Any questions about those programs right there? Next question is, how do you get there? Okay, so you want to get a bachelor's degree. We were talking a little earlier about the cost of a bachelor's degree. Okay, you want to get a bachelor's degree from UHart, you're going to be looking at over $100,000 in student loans. A lot of them are going to be private student loans. You guys ever looked at student loans at all? My wife found this out the hard way about 4 months ago. Federal government, the federally backed student loans, they will only pay for $57,500 of your student loans as an undergraduate student. Above that has to be private. And the interest rates will be much higher than that. That is a lot of money, people. A lot of money. That is a house. Honest to God house. My wife, right now, she's about to finish her BSN, a second degree, and she has an honest to God $97,000 in student loans at this very moment right now. The house I just sold in Wisconsin was $140,000. That's almost a house, right? So how do you get there? Okay, the Army Reserves has a lot of ways out there to pay for school right now, and the Army Reserves is actually hurting. This is directly what we do. I don't do AMED recruiting for the healthcare field specifically. I know a lot about it because I'm trying to get into it. But this is our area right here. Okay, so the Army Reserves is a part-time option with the Army. It's 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summertime as you go through school, and we have a lot of jobs in the medical field because we have the 405th Combat Support Hospital in West Hartford, Connecticut. Okay, they have a lot of jobs for things like medics. They have a lot of jobs for medical logistics specialists. They have a lot of jobs for a lot of stuff we have in the medical field. I really couldn't name them all right now off the top of my head. So somebody in high school, starting as a junior in high school, can join the Army Reserves, become part of that unit, attend basic training this summer, finish their senior year next year, go through AIT, which is their job training, come back and go to school. And the times you're on a training, you're working for us 1 week in a month, and then 2 weeks in the summertime. Okay? We have we have over $50,000 in college incentives out there for that Army Reserve part-time commitment. We have everything from student loan repayment. Right now we're seeing up to $30,000 in student loan repayment. That is where, as you go through your college career, we'll pay back up to $30,000 of your loans. We have enlistment bonus out there up to $20,000. And one of my favorites is the GI Bill and the kicker. So the GI Bill is where, as a drilling reservist, while you're working for us 1 week in a month, earning your pay, which is around $200 for that 1 weekend, when you're a full-time student, the federal government will pay you $367 per month directly to your bank account. That's money you use however you like it. You can pay for tuition, you can pay for books, you can pay for McDonald's. We don't care. It's money paid to you. Every reserve component gets that. You join the National Guard, you're going to get that. You can join the Marine Corps Reserve, you're going to get that. Every reserve component gets that. Okay, it's considered an entitlement. It's tax-free, by the way, as well. One of the Army incentives that we have out there is called the kicker, which is where the Army will add either $100, $200, or $350 on top of that every single month you're a student. So instead of that $367 per month, you're getting $717 per month on top of your drill pay, which is around $200. So you think about that. For a part-time job during your undergrad, 1 week in a month, you're receiving gross over $900 a month for 1 week in a month. Okay? On top of that, on top of some of the bonuses and loan repayments and things like that we have out there. So, part-time, being a medic for the Army, part-time can pay for your undergrad. Then you can use that, what we've already paid for, to get into a medical school or get into a program to be like a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant or other graduate training in the medical field. The Army will pay for that. The absolute most money out there for the Army education programs are in healthcare. Absolute most. So, we only have a few minutes left. What questions do you guys have?
What do you like or dislike about your job?
I love getting the chance to talk and interact and help a lot of people out through their career in life. I mean, what we do is something that, at least we genuinely believe in what we do. Nobody in here just hates the Army. Nobody in here doesn't think that it was a good choice for a variety of circumstances. Whether you're trying to improve your education, get a job, gain life experience, it's a great opportunity. So we like being able to provide that for people. What I don't like about my job, well, for me, it's gotten boring. I've done this for almost 5 years. That's just me. What do you think, Jake?
Well, I like the Army. I can say that much. I like the lifestyle of the Army. I like, you know, the camaraderie that I get with the people in the Army. It's like a brother and sisterhood that we formed a bond over years and years of serving together. I like recruiting. I like doing this for this reason right here. I get to come and tell everybody how awesome the Army is, and you know, all the great experiences that I've had in the Army. But I don't like the paperwork. I'm not a paperwork person. I do not like paperwork.
No, you're not.
So I usually don't do it. I let somebody else take care of that, and then I go out and
We
I
prefer it
just
that
don't.
way.
Yeah. I hate paperwork. And my last job as a radio operator, I loved it because there was no paperwork. I worked with electronics. I mean, that's what I did. I carried radios around and, you know, get to be all Army cool and jump out of airplanes and stuff like that. That's awesome. It's an experience that rarely, very, very few people, less than 1% of the Army, you know, is airborne. So I get to be part of this elite group of soldiers that bravely jump out of airplanes.
So as far as the Army as a whole, my absolute favorite thing about the Army is honestly the benefits. I don't lie. Paid for my bachelor's degree, I paid $90 for it. I get more paid vacation than almost any other civilian sector worker gets. I get 30 days paid vacation per year. Every time we have a federal holiday, I get another day on top of that. I got 4 days off for Veterans Day. We're getting 4 days off for Thanksgiving. We're getting 4 days off for Christmas, 4 days off for New Year's. We get a lot of time off. My big thing that's important to me right now is health care. So all of our health care for myself and my family is 100% covered by the federal government, all of it. And I actually have a situation with my daughter where she was born with spina bifida. I don't know if you guys have heard of spina bifida. She's had a lot of complications. She's had 15 surgeries right now. She's 3 years old. She's on a ventilator at night. To date, the Army has paid out well over $1 million for her care. And I have paid for very, very, very little of that. The only thing I pay actually is a $30 copay for her nursing care, which is where they come into my house and they watch her for 15 hours, and the Army pays some $10,000 for that every month. So for me, honestly, the benefits are my absolute favorite thing about the Army as a whole, because the Army takes care of us in ways that no other civilian career would. They put a high emphasis on families. Somebody asked about how it is being married. We're really running out of time, so I hope I don't run out of time here. But being married, the Army will basically pay for, part of the deal being active duty is the Army is going to pay for a place for you to live. Okay?
Thank you. You guys, can we give them a big round of applause? Thank you guys for your time and
Just
beautiful
remember,
message.
that's my contact information. If anybody has